It's the SDG Podcast. Before we get started, you can check us out on the web at solutiondesign.com/podcast or find us on all the social medias, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Solution Design Group. We're podcasting. It's happening right now. Say hello and introduce yourselves, podcasters.
Hi, I'm Chad Gentner.
Hello, I'm Peter Lawrence.
And I'm Kyle Bacher. And today we're going to talk about this current situation that AI finds itself in terms of property like likeness rights, and there's strikes happening, there's lawsuits happening, and it's kind of all based on the machine learning using someone's content being trained on somebody's stuff. So that's a problem, apparently.
Well, pretending, right?
Yeah. And then it's we're being able to replace writers and eventually like just cloning and having virtual actors. So we're going to see more, Bruce Willis has done acting, but we might see more Bruce Willis movies in the future.
Wait, hold on. We're not talking about clones yet, are we?
Not quite yet.
Okay.
It's coming though. Cloning has happened. So I think it's kind of a pivotal moment where things are changing again. Some kind of discovery is made and the world changes. CDs are a thing. CD players happen. Tape decks, tapes, 8-track tapes go by the wayside. Napster happens. All of a sudden, everybody's making these giant mixtapes available to the world. And now you don't have to buy music. And so
all free.
That happened and we weren't ready for it. So there was a backlash around that. When the iPod became the de facto thing for listening to music and iTunes, they kind of had a stranglehold on that when they were going to put people's music out there and when people were going to sell their music on their service. Like, it's better to get a slow nickel than a quick dime. So people were signing up for that. And then contracts were signed a long time ago, giving away like rights to things for movies. Jet Li, apparently, I read an article, he apparently turned down The Matrix because they wanted him to sign away the rights to his likeness and his fighting moves and all of that stuff that they were capturing. And he didn't want to do it. Given that situation, what do y'all think about that?
So easy.
I'm not sure what we're talking about. So will Hollywood use AI? Will we see AI-generated actors? I mean, we literally just did, right? The Flash came out, computer-generated Adam West Batman. Spoiler. It was a horrible movie. I'm not spoiling anything for anybody. Computer-generated Adam West, computer-generated, what was the 30s and 40s Superman actor, George Reeves. Christopher Reeves was it's already happening. Right.
Right.
Why did they do that?
Worlds multiverse, right? Worlds colliding. I don't know. It was a silly.
Every Flash thing they make has to be Flashpoint. He goes back to save his mom, and then the world changes the universe and has to put it back the way it was, and blah blah blah. But you're right. They used all of those, like there were all sort of different realities based on those properties that have happened in the past. I don't know how that works out from a ownership standpoint.
That's not really an AI thing, though, is it? Like, it's generating.
Well, AI has gotten us to this point, though, where it's emulating writing styles. It's emulating
generative
voices.
AI has given us, fresh original content based on prior art. Actors, unlimited Bruce Willis movies, though, that's already been, that's not AI. That's just computer animation getting to the point where you can recreate a likeness, is out there. But the more interesting thing, and I think Akil actually got to this 2 weeks ago when we were talking about QA, generating extras, right? That could be, that's going to be neater now, right? Like, you could probably have massive crowd scenes. Well, you already can, right? Like Weta Digital did this for Lord of the Rings back in, I don't know, how long ago those movies come out? 15 years ago? 20 years ago?
Don't say that. It makes me think about time.
I'm old.
And that wasn't necessarily a generative AI thing either, right? That was just computer animation getting to the point where, yes, we can rebuild massive scenes of so many extras and actors, right? When we talk about AI, we got to talk about generating new, fresh content based on whatever, right? And right now it's text and images, and we're starting to get video. And I think it's actually going to affect video games a whole lot, right? Like, generative scenes for massive multiplayer games is going to be a lot richer than I think we're used to. And I feel, like if you're a Hollywood actor, or a writer, I would say, generative AI going to be a helper, not necessarily a replacement for you.
Right.
I read there's a guy, local guy, actually. I didn't realize he was local, but his name is Damien Riel, RiehL. Damien Riel. He's a lawyer, but he was also a software developer in a previous life. And he is elbow deep in the legal implications of AI and these large language models and everything that comes out of them. He just did a podcast episode for another podcast called Practical AI that was just wonderful, right? Super interesting dude. One of the things that he did, he created this this music database, right? So you guys have heard about, was it Katy Perry getting sued for a melody, and
Ed Sheeran.
Ed Sheeran just got it, right? And a few other things.
He won,
right?
yeah.
Well, melodies are incredibly simple to brute force into existence, right? It's instead of letters, you're just coming up with musical notes. So it's, like da 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 da, right? So this guy wrote an algorithm that generated musical melodies, right? Pretty simple. And then he copyrighted all of them. And he ended up generating over 4 billion melodies. Basically every possible combination of musical notes. Generated them, copyrighted them, and now artists have, I think it's called All the Music, an entire database that is copyrighted, but public domain, right? They literally can't get sued for melodies anymore. If we see another lawsuit,
he did it as a protective measure. Like,
initially,
I'm going to copyright all of it, but then I'm going to let everybody use it and not sue all of you.
Yeah. So initially, it was him and his buddy were at a conference, and they were just bored and drunk in a hotel lobby. And they're like, hey, I wonder if we could do this. It's one of those things where they're like, I wonder if I could. And then they just whipped out a proof of concept and like, oh, that's actually pretty simple, right? And then just went nuts and did the entirety of music. I mean, basically entirety of melody. I gotta find the thing now just to make sure I'm not.
It sounds reasonable. I mean, or it sounds unreasonable depending on how you want to look at it, right? If you say that every melody is, how is he was he able to copyright the bass line from Under Pressure, right? Wasn't there an iced tea or vanilla ice?
They probably had to filter out, this matches this other, so now we got to take this out of the database. We can't copyright these because they've already been done. But would you?
If they allowed the copyright, then don't you then own all the copyright?
But then you're the generator of the music, that huge database. If they've generated other people's stuff just by sheer brute force,
well, you'd have to.
If you do, you've got all the combination, because there's not that many. You can play most rock songs with 3 chords.
Right.
And the entire set of chords and stuff that makes up rock music is not everything. And then you've got the whole history of music to pull from.
Right.
So it's like filtering out and saying, okay, all of these melodies are fresh. They're new. We generated these melodies. We accidentally, or just by sheer brute force, duplicated ones that already existed that other people came up with. We got to take those. We can't copyright something that's already been copyrighted. So we got to take all those out. And what we're left with is everything else that people would eventually come up with on their own. And they can, because we have it copyrighted and we've made it public domain.
But see that, and I think that's what their point was that they just did all. And they copyrighted all.
So no one that comes up with that stuff on their own can copyright it because it's already copyrighted. So anybody can use it now. So it's in the database, but you're noodling around with your guitar and you come up with a song and you throw it out there and anybody can play that melody because every melody is copyrighted and open domain.
So I think the guy's point was like a melody, and he actually says this on his website, melodies, just broken it down into a math problem, right? So a melody is basically a math equation, right? What 3 things come after one after the other, right? Math equations are facts, and you can't copyright a fact. And so he had a lot of arguments. Again, I highly recommend everybody listen to Practical AI. They do a really great job of digging way into this. They go into detail about the legality of machine generated anything and basically just like philosophical questions, right? So like if I write a book, right, if I'm going to write a novel and I'm going to use AI to help me, one of the things that Damien says is that evidently, I didn't know this was the case, but evidently machine generated anything isn't necessarily copyrightable, right? You can't copyright something produced by a machine.
Right.
If there's no human component to that, you can't copyright it, right? So let's say you write a magazine article. Go ahead, Peter.
But the human component is the leading question to the generative AI, right?
Right. So this is where he was going with it, right? Like you say, if you just told GPT, hey, write me a 1,000 page story or a 1,000 word story, right?
Right.
And that's your only input. You can't necessarily copyright that. What he said is it gets really dicey, and I guess the cases are going to come, and it's going to depend on the judge and the judge's ability to understand the whole domain of the whole problem. So like he wrote a story, right? A magazine article, and he said he used AI to help. Right, because he said I can kind of write a page an hour, and they wanted this 18-page thing, and I didn't have 18 hours to write it, so I used GPT to kind of help me. All right, so if I'm using GPT to help me, I'm helping it generate content, and then I'm editing that content myself, and then I'm having it generate more, and I'm editing it more. At the end of the day, 60% of that might be his words, 40% might be the GPT generated content. So is 60% of that, if 60% of those words copyrightable and 40% aren't, I think there's going to be a lot of case law coming up that's going to figure out exactly this question.
The percentage of what you can call. So if somebody steals 50% of your work, it's fine. But if they do 75, then they're breaking it because you used AI for part of it. So it makes it less original. But then the question is the training of the AI all someone else's stuff, or does it generate stuff to train itself? But still humans are the same thing. We're listening to and reading and taking in other people's information all the time and then turning it into something else. It's inspiring us.
Right. So when they talk about AI generating whatever, right? This is another thing that came up in his talk. He was talking about there's this legal concept called fruit of a poison tree, right? So if you have a large language model, and part of the model was created from copyrighted material, right? Infringing material, and the legal system and the courts decide, well, that's not fair use of that material,
right?
Well, then anything generated from that model becomes also not fair use, right? Anything. Right. The interesting thing is, and this is actually a thing that Google Books did. Google Books, I don't know if you remember, but they scanned in the text, every single book ever, right? And they were sued by publishers. They were sued, and the publishers said, you can't do that, right? That's not fair use. And what the courts decided is that there is this there's an argument to be made for not necessarily fair use, but it's what do you call it? Transformative, right? It's a transformative use of it. They're not necessarily, you're not scanning that book and reading it and enjoying it. You're scanning that book in order to provide something else. And they decided that was fair use. And that applies to AI because if you put copyrighted material into a large language model, the court's going to say that's not fair use, or that's a transformative use of that copyrighted material. We'll find out. If it's transformative, then, oh, God, go nuts. Like put Prince's catalog in there and generate new Prince music, and you'll probably be fine if you don't market it as Prince music, right? But if they don't find it to be a transformative use of copyrighted material, I think the EU has already done this. They've already kind of said, what did they do? They said you got to give provenance of your data sets, right? You can't necessarily just say, yes, it's a large language model. It's kind of a black box. It's all numbers, right? Go ahead, go nuts.
I totally took all this stuff legally. I'm sure of it.
Yeah, right. So
I checked the box.
And I think I forget exactly what the EU AI policies had in them, but I know one of them was generating models based on copyrighted material at least has to be disclosed, if not outright banned. I forget the direction.
That brings up another interesting point. As technical people, we've seen other cases go through the court systems, and you just sit back and you go, you guys don't even understand what you're talking about here for the arguments that you're making. No, that's not how that technology works. The internet is not a series of tubes to go way, way back in the time machine of famously misunderstood technology terms.
Yeah, that's, I think, a danger is the deciders and the lawmakers don't really know what they're making laws and the impact and Like they don't understand the system. But looking at the Google thing, it's like, okay, they scanned in everything. Basically, they made a copy of it.
Well,
Like,
they
okay,
OCR'd it too.
could you go to the copy machine and copy the book and then stick that on your shelf and use it for a reference, or give it to somebody else to use it for reference? So the transformation piece, though, is using it as a source to shape something else, to come up with something else. And so like copyright, there's educational use, there's things you can do and use other materials for, like in a presentation, things like that.
Right.
Where everything comes down to when somebody's profiting, that's when people get bent out of shape. It's like, okay, if I feel like I'm losing something here because this other thing is happening, then I have a problem with that.
Oh, and nobody's writing a book that says, quote, half of somebody else's book, end quote, with the proper, footnote. I took pages 1 through 274. That's what this is. I just really felt that covered the point I was trying to make well.
But I think what you're getting at is like a derivative use of an original material, right? Like that's right. There's a derivative use and there's a transform. I'm not going to create a new Star Wars movie, right, without explicit permission from Lucasfilm. I think actually Zack Snyder has a movie coming out that was literally supposed to be set in the Star Wars universe, but just like in the universe, right? Like you'd see a stormtrooper every once in a while. And I think they said, no, it doesn't really fit what we want to do. So he just took out the Star Wars reference and made the exact same movie. And that's like that's derivative. I think I'm no lawyer, but
we're not lawyers.
He made My Dinner with Andre, but it takes place in that cafe, that tavern in Mos Eisley. Why would you do that? Like, because you like the ships, like the planets, the animals, the Wookiees.
Yeah,
but like you're saying, it doesn't change. Like it didn't really make a major change to the work that Zack Snyder did. Right. He still made the movie. All he had to do was like take those elements out.
So derivatives don't necessarily add anything new. That's the distinction. And a transformative takes that and does something new with it, right? And to bring it back to the AI discussion, if your model is trained using like every piece of the Star Wars canon and generates a new, fresh piece of Star Wars canon or non-canon, if we're talking Star Wars Legends, right? Sure. Then you'll probably be in legal trouble, right? Even if you don't slap the word Star Wars on it, you're probably going to say, yeah, that's a derivative use, and you're not really adding anything new to it necessarily, and you're going to be liable. If it's transformative, and if you're just using all of the Star Wars content out there to, I'm not trying to think of a good use case for that. Like, I don't even think like Wikipedia. You guys have heard of Wikipedia, right?
Yeah.
Yep. It's the wiki for Star Wars, everything Star Wars. I don't think even that would necessarily be considered fair use, even though Lucasfilm lets them get away with it, or Disney, I guess now, lets them get away with that. I don't necessarily think that would even be, like, that would be a perfect thing that an AI could produce for you, right? Hey, generate a wiki page for each of these characters and each of these ships and each of these everything, right? Awesome use of an AI. But not necessarily a transformative use of AI. It's a derivative use, and it's probably going to get you in a little trouble. I don't know how Wikipedia exists without getting sued into oblivion, because I think Disney actually tried to host their own Star Wars wiki. They just never did it as well as Wikipedia does.
I mean, because it's all people-generated content, right? I mean, that's the same thing with Wikipedia. Wikipedia was written from scratch. They didn't start with Encyclopedia Britannica and copy the entries.
Right.
Here's a piece of white paper. Hey, everybody, let's build an encyclopedia. And this is how you do it.
And then they went and read encyclopedias and other stuff, did their research, and then they wrote the new work, but they were fed by all of that other work. They had to look at it.
I mean, they cite many, many things in each article, right?
So they cite they're supposed to cite their references.
Right.
And, I think that the hope is that AI becomes doesn't become your brain. It becomes like a prosthetic, like a tool that enhances your work that you can use
Like a
to make your life
smartphone?
easier. Yeah. I mean, I think that's the ideal. And the fear right now is loss of jobs over it and loss of somebody else taking you and profiting off of you.
Kind of like the college organization with 4 letters that is now allowing students to use name, image, and likeness and sell those rights during their sporting years, right? Like you
Yeah.
can sell your image and get paid for that. It's no longer NCAA's property, right? They
Right.
can't make deals with EA Sports or some other organization. And obviously this is the, what do we call it? The super disconnected programmers version of that story. Like having done almost zero research, but having that name, image, likeness stuff has become more important for college students and super important for some, right? Some are, going to be millionaires, multimillionaires before getting out of college sports. Some are not.
That whole college kid thing has always bothered me, right? Like college kid agrees not to profit off of his likeness or anything. Meanwhile, EA makes NCAA football and makes $1 billion off of doing exactly what they tell the kids not to. It is such an abrupt hypocrisy that it's ridiculous. But
I think they're recognizing it. And obviously, before computer games and before all those other things, it wasn't quite as big a deal, right?
Nobody cared in the 80s or the 70s, right? It's
right.
When shoe deals became big. It's when video games became massive. It's when all that stuff happened. I forgot how we got down this hole instead of AI.
All the rules of this stuff for sports, for college sport, amateur sports. I was like, okay, they're going to sell tickets, and the tickets are going to go into the school, and that ticket money is going to help pay for the program and stuff like that. And then when they're out of school, they can go pro, they get their education, all that kind of stuff. So they do like profit off of the free education and scholarship, stuff like that. But then it changed, and all of a sudden, there's the 4-letter organization that's selling rights to a game manufacturer to use all of this stuff.
Right.
And then all this money is changing hands.
And selling television rights, right? Like that's where a large sum of money came in too, right?
Right.
Before ESPN, college games were not necessarily as big to as many people. They were still big to your, if your alma mater was playing, you were excited about that, but you may not have been able to watch it anywhere except for the stadium. So
what happens if they say, okay, we can't use all of this stuff to train our AIs, so they mark ChatGPT, we're gonna, now you're banned, you're bad because you've been trained on this stuff.
I mean, it comes down to licensing probably.
Yeah. It's licensing, and I don't know if I hope or not hope that the government gets involved, but I think government involvement would just lead to more auditing, more paperwork, more of that kind of thing, and not necessarily
more government.
Which maybe, I don't know. As a non-copyright holder, I guess I don't really have a lot of skin in the game. If I were, I would probably be way more concerned about this.
From a consultant standpoint, right? I've been giving away my code to all the companies that I've worked at for the last 16 years, right? That's not true. They've been paying me for my code for the last 16 years.
Yeah, they're paying you to do something for them.
I may or may not. I'm definitely not getting residuals or any sort of consulting dollars for my work.
So I worked in radio. I worked in radio for a year back in like the 1800s. And I did a lot of commercials. All that stuff was recorded. Like if I went out, and got my car and turned on the radio and heard a bunch of new commercials that were my voice, well, I couldn't tell because it sounds different. But if someone hey, that's you, we're hearing you. It's like, well, now they're making money off of all of that.
Right.
And it's like, well, hey, wait a minute. That would piss me off. I where's my cut? I think that kind of encapsulated one side of the story. But the AI, the stuff it's generating, I kind of just want to have a seal of this was this was AI supported content, AI generated, like AI was used to make this content. And then there's some benefits of, well, they made 3 works with this based on this other person's stuff, as part of it. Well, now I like that stuff. Maybe now I'm buying that person's. Maybe now I listen to those 3 Prince-esque songs, and now I'm buying a bunch of Prince records because I liked those. It brought me into it. Like, there might be benefits of that stuff. There might be benefits of AI generated music that sounds like a band you like.
Also be a horrific consequence, right? Because imagine a world like an idiocracy type world where all we get is the same junk. I mean, it's already right. The originality gulch is just going to get worse if we don't. And so I'm not saying we will. It's just he's got no.
So we're going to look at organic, fully human generated original stuff, non-GMO, like the pure. Those are like the albums. Well, they just sound better. That's the draw. This is pure human originality and creativity. Their seal of approval. No AI was used during the filming of this movie. And then there's going to be the artificial stuff. And it's like artificial music, artificial movies, artificial stuff. That's an artificial Bruce Willis. That's an artificial, I just think there's going to be that distinction. I don't think you can stop it.
You just want the labels to have the ingredients list?
Yeah, kind of. I want a warning that what I'm looking at is not, and that's where it crosses over the real world when an AI tape gets released, nefarious purposes, and somebody in a bad picture doing something bad. That's now you can't believe anything you see.
I just think I don't know. It's such a miserable sounding future where Harrison Ford now can be in a sitcom, right? An AI generated Harrison Ford can now be in a really stupid sitcom that's going to run for 10 episodes on Netflix and then fade into oblivion, instead of giving somebody new an opportunity to be something, right?
Yeah, that sounds horrible.
I
still want to see
my friend Mary Mack. She's on the show on Hulu. It's called Solar Opposites. She does the voice for one of the characters. And she's done other stuff, too. She's on strike now because of the Hollywood thing. The actors and the voice actors, they're all joining in with the writers. And she's terrified, a little less so like after we talked. Hi, Mary. You're not listening, but it's fine. But her and her husband are both in that industry, right? Like Mary Mack she's a comedian. She's been on Conan. She's been on a couple other things. She's got small little speaking roles on things like Solar Opposites in the hopes that she'll, build a career.
Right.
Her husband, Tim Harmston, same exact thing, right? Tim does. He's been around a little bit longer. He's been around long enough to be on Letterman. And he's done little things here and there in the hopes of building a career. But if we have these AI or computer generated opportunities to bring A-list actors to C-list roles, those people don't have a career path anymore. And it's already hard enough, right? Those two have been at it for more than a couple of decades now,
right?
And they're just breaking into speaking roles on Hulu cartoons, and they're incredibly talented people. You should look for them and find them when they're in town. They're amazing. That doesn't exist though for if Harrison Ford is going to be in every episode of Friends or whatever. I don't want to live in that kind of world. I love Harrison Ford.
But what
I don't want to see him,
What about the flip side, where you've got AI generating random C-level persons to fill the C-level? Obviously, we're not talking about your friends. They're for whatever level. The AI is generating a new voice, right? A completely generated voice, not Harrison Ford, not anybody recognizable, but it's just a random voice that says 300 words in a show. Right?
Yeah, also horrible, right?
Horrible, right?
Yeah, that's the foot in the door for these people.
Right.
What if that goes away, right? Like, imagine an entry-level software developer job doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
And gosh darn, I mean, that might be a direction that this goes as well. Like, those entry-level roles get harder and harder and harder to break into because, hey, there's algorithms that handle what you can do, and we just need senior people to fill these, right? Peter, you and I become Bruce Willis and the Harrison Ford of software development because
yes,
I know, right? Great. because you can just replicate what we do over and over again, and you just need us around for fine tuning a model here and there, right? Like we're just helping, right? Yeah, it's worrisome. Not a lot though. I mean, I think as people adopt these tools,
you and I.
Not yet for you and I. I think as people adopt these tools and use them as productivity accelerators instead of replacements, we'll be fine.
So let me throw this out there. I have met, I don't know, 10, 20, 30 developers that have come up through the customer service ranks. They started out answering help desk questions. Then they wanted to not answer help desk questions the same over and over. So they would automate that and they would build on their skills. Kyle, you're another good example of someone that did not come up through a traditional path but got there, right? You got to development, you got to configurator or whatever you want to talk about.
Right.
That path may not exist if we have AI doing all the customer service or all the mobile home sales.
I think, I had a tool that enabled me, play to do the stuff. So if my tools had gone away, I would have been, back to waiting tables, selling mobile homes, working at a radio station, doing something like that. But
I think you would have sought out different tools still.
Because
the desire is usually there.
Yeah. I mean, my pull into technology, it's like I was doing this stuff at home, and while I was doing other jobs, I was the guy doing this kind of stuff. And I kind of grew into it, having a passion for it. But then it's like, with those, if we have these AI tools, more people will be able to do that. More people will be able to maybe transition out of jobs.
That's a nice way to look at it.
Yeah. Maybe like, my job, my career dried up because it was automated. But now I don't have to be like a schooled, experienced, super genius like Peter Lawrence. I can use AI to help me be that like person and do that kind of work.
Well, and maybe to take your first steps, right? Like instead of maybe having to go as far down the traditional other career path, you might have gotten into IT career even faster if some of those steps had already been built up and given you sort of a head start, right? Like, Excel is great and it does a lot of things. An AI enabled Excel might get you configuring or doing little scripts, little things to help you make your life easier, help you with that. And you'll just build on that skills.
I think, we're talking about people coming up as customer support and customer service jobs and everything else. And
it happens, right?
I know, it totally happens, but that's our point, though. Those jobs themselves are going to be affected by this, right? Like, I'm not necessarily nervous yet, really, because it's still way too early to be all that nervous, but it is, you can see pathways for this to become an entry-level job, right? Like, there's, an AI generated service support technician is going to be, 10x as productive as like one support technician be 10x as productive with AI as they could otherwise.
Right.
Now, the interesting question is, we are used to working 40-hour weeks, especially as consultants. It's kind of built into the business model that, God willing, we all work 40-hour weeks. Right. If AI makes you 5 times as productive, we're already studying the effects of like GitHub Copilot. People are saying, yes, it makes you twice as productive as a developer, right? So an 8-hour task now takes 4 hours. Right. All right. What does that mean as far as our work week goes? Do we get those 4 hours, or does the man get those extra 4 hours?
Right? Maybe the AI itself will help us to effectively develop a results-oriented world where if I can build a deck in 2 hours and it takes someone else 10 hours to build that deck and we charge the same, you're getting the same product. Well, you only work 2 hours, so I should pay you less. It's like, well, you got 10 hours worth of deck. Like everybody else is going to do this thing in 10 hours, but I'm especially good at it. And I've also got this new tool that helps me do it. And this new tool costs money. And I had to learn how to do it. Then naturally the price would adjust a little bit. But again, and you shift the mindset to it's the output we care about. So we're going to hire you to give us this output. We expect this output every week. If it takes you 2 hours or 40 hours and we have the work that we want from you, it doesn't matter. We don't care. We're going to get to that, or we're going to still look at people like an hourly commodity where, well, whatever you do, you're going to take 40 hours of your week to do it.
Well, I think
the combination
ahead,
of
Chad.
AI. Oh, I'm sorry. I was going to say the combination of AI plus working from home just means here's the thing. I would love for everything to be a product oriented output, right? Like, hey, we're going to build this app, right? I did it with AI. It took me this long. We estimated 160 hours. It took me 40, right?
Right.
That's just never going to be reality, though. I mean,
No.
That's not how. I mean, imagine this. I mean, our career, Peter, is impacted by that drastically, right? Like, if we can start delivering these massive projects way faster, I don't know if that's good or bad. I mean, it's probably great, right? It's going to be great for our customers, and that's the most important thing. They're going to love it, and we're going to do better at what we're going to be better at what we do because of it. But what does that mean for our billable rates? Or the number of hours? I don't know.
Let me ask this question. What about when the AI leads us down the wrong path for 2 months and we get to the roadblock that we weren't expecting?
Pick the bad AI.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Or
Yeah,
you were given the bad AI.
Yeah.
I think we've got like a generation or maybe a generation and a half of existing infrastructure and existing architecture that relies on us, like people, to make all of these critical path decisions. But I mean, just think of like the basics of building enterprise applications, right? Like, hey, is everything on the same network? Are we segmenting networks? Can we do this? Can we do this? Can everything talk to each other? Do we have to build firewalls, security groups, all that stuff? So much of that infrastructure is going to be relatively dumb for what would you say, Peter? A decade, 2 decades before we have some sort of AI assist built into this, right?
Yeah. And we're getting there with some of the other cloud tools, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Like for sure, a lot of these tools are getting to be, they're having a little, like they're baby steps towards being more and more and more intelligent.
Right.
But it's almost like, how they talk about putting AI in cars and having cars talk to each other to make traffic patterns more efficient, right? It's that same problem with enterprise software.
Yeah.
Until all of these components can talk to each other on some standardized protocol, like we're fine, right? Like we're going to still build, we're still going to solution, we're still going to do all of what we do. But when these things do start talking to each other, our career changes drastically, likely, which is wonderful. I'm tired. I just want $10.
I think that there will be whole new services that bubble up that can revolutionize and innovate. I think of content. One of the biggest problems large companies that is dealing with the volume of content they have to deal with.
Maintenance.
Yeah. And the cleanup and archiving and organizing and securing, and there's all these facets to it. And it's to go in and do that, like have a team go in and do that is very difficult because you rely on all this decision making. I can't come in and clean up your stuff. I don't know what I can throw away. I can say, hey, everything older than 5 years is gone. And if you agree to it, that's fine, but you're never gonna, because there's always that one thing you might need from way back that you just can't throw away. But if storage is so cheap now, AI can go in there and just monitor your workplace for 6 months or whatever, everything that's going on over your network, every file that's being opened, and it can understand your organization. Then it can go and say, okay, well, based on all of this, and then scanning through all the content, pulling out the keywords, like finding duplicates, all this stuff it can do, like, okay, now based on this, I'm going to create a whole new system of organization where I can surface anything you need in a second. Now that all that time you spend finding the right thing, where'd I put that? Was that in an email? Did I download it? Do I have the right one? All of that stuff frees up a bunch of time for your organization to focus on their core work. And maybe the result of that is we don't need as many people. The result is we've gotten way better with the people we have. And this is awesome.
Yeah, companies, capitalism is kind of built on growth, right?
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens when growth is no longer sustained, better or worse, for good or bad. I think we'll have the same workforce. We'll just have slightly different roles. and we'll be slightly more productive. And boy, I mean, productivity indexes are a thing too. So as we get more and more productive, that could be a net gain for, I don't know. This is less factual and more conjecture now. So I don't know what's happening. I think it's
excited to see.
Yeah.
I will say this as my parting thought. There's still a lot of people on the Star Trek Enterprise, even though that computer is amazing. There's still a lot of people doing a lot of things. So maybe we're okay.
I don't know why you need a separate pad for everything. Like, I can get by with one iPad, but
maybe
if
it was
you
an
look
AI
at Kirk,
generated.
He's got pads everywhere. I don't get it.
They look cooler. They look way cooler.
Well, I think we'll see in the next year. I don't know when this whole strike thing's going to end or the outcome of that. I just know that all my movies are pushed.
I think we're in for a long summer, which is a bummer, right? Because we had COVID for 3 years, and that pushed a lot of the content way, way out.
Right.
Now we're post-COVID, and we're in this this creative austerity mode, which is also just a double whammy, right? So if you were looking forward to a thing and you thought it would come back, gotcha. It's not going to come back. It's
the rebirth of the indie movie.
Maybe we'll get a new Clerks out of this. But it's a hell of a 1-2 punch. But the writers and the actors and those folks, they're not wrong. They absolutely should be doing what they're doing because streaming
I
residuals,
fully support them.
Yeah, that whole thing is it's chaos. And unless you up in the entire industry and the entire pay structure around the industry and just pay people fairly for content produced. Yeah,
it's horrible, like how much they take.
No real part of thought. I would say absolutely look up the thing we talked about earlier, all the music stuff. And Damien Real, I'm butchering the last name, and I apologize. Not that he's going to listen to this, but actually a local guy. Look at some of his. He's actually done TED Talks. He's done a lot of stuff. He's a lawyer / developer, and he's got some great takes for.
What was the podcast you also recommended?
Yeah, Practical AI is wonderful. There was it's run by one dude that's I think he's a product strategist at Lockheed Martin, and the other dude just went to some smaller company that he started. I forget his name. I forget the company name, but if this is your thing, they've been doing it for more than a few years now, right? And then just in the last 9 months, they've just had an insane insane bump in listeners and things to talk about. It's actually it's kind of funny if you listen to the episodes recorded around January, February, March, as things start going absolutely bonkers. They've got it's neat. It's really cool. They talk to a lot of people. They talk to OpenAI folks. They talk to Hugging Face folks. They talk to people building tools around that stuff. If you want to jumpstart on AI, I listened to 17 hours of this on my drive from Minneapolis to Nashville and then Nashville back. So it's and my wife.
That's good.
Yeah. It allowed my wife to sleep really, really well on the entire drive. So, yeah.
I love Nashville. I like to be able to go into a place at 10 a.m. and see live music.
Yeah,
it's
awesome.
Great town. Some guy you've never heard of that's amazing on the guitar, amazing voice. Yeah, it's a great town. I think we're running out of time. Any quick parting thoughts, or should we just shut her down?
Have you got any? I gave mine.
I'm going to start brainstorming services that AI can make possible.
Okay.
And I'm going to make a list, and we'll see how many come true.
You're not going to develop them. You're just going to wait for them.
Well, I can't do them all. So I'm just going to speculate. In 10 years, we'll be able to see ourselves in movies. They'll be able to digitally replace us. And so that'll be like a choose your own adventure. Chad Jutner as Luke Skywalker.
Well, everybody wants to see that, but
Kyle Bacher is, I probably want to be Han Solo, but I'm probably going to end up being Jabba the Hutt. Self-burn. All right. And on that note, let's say goodbye, everybody.
All right.
Bye, everybody.
Solution Design Group is a digital product consultancy in Minneapolis. Check us out on the web at solutiondesign.com or look for us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram at Solution Design Group.